sound of a conch. In Tamil, we call it the sang. One interpretation for the birth of the word sangam actually points in this direction of the conch or the sangha, which was used to make a clarion call for people to assemble together. This would generally be a galaxy of learned people, scholars, who would then embark onto various kinds of discussions and debates. A congregation. This could have led to the coining of the word Sangam in Tamil, because Sangam literally means union. The Sangam age dates back to about 2500 years. It is often called the golden age of Tamil literature just because of the sheer volume of literature treasures that were created during this time period. Yes, I had grown up hearing the word Sangam many a time, but was really oblivious to the sheer enormity of its impact until now. Pandemic, international lockdown everywhere, and I had the chance to personally connect or tune in or sink in with Ojas, the brainchild of Deepa Ganesh, through her Upasana Arts. Who you hear it from? This is the title of a book of essays by Simon McBurney of Complicity. Who you hear it from, I mean, is just so very appropriate for Sangam and I, because that is how it all started. Whom did I hear it from? Well, it was the inimitable Professor Dr. S. Raghuraman. It was his exposition that really drew me into the world of Sangam. His infectious enthusiasm caught on to me and my consciousness. We were actually working on this famous composition in the world of the Bharatanatyam repertoire with Maven Koo. I was in the crux of digesting the intensity of it, which was the sounds of a broken heart, crying in despair about a possibly lost forever beloved. And I distinctly recall his words, "You have to earn it in order to embark on Ayyayo or Payada." Now that got me thinking. And voila, the very next day, Raghuraman sir was explaining the Sangam age heroines waiting, which instantly struck a chord in me. The poem was indeed the answer. The truth is, I did not set out intentionally wanting to explore, dig into these ancient poems. The reality was that they found their way somehow through different triggers and impulses, meandering through very many layers, surfacing upwards and inwards and spiraling into not just my consciousness, but everybody around me, and those that I kept nagging thereafter and continue to until this day. Here was a Sangam poem. Its unique language, words, phrases that started lighting up inside me and outside me. Suddenly a vent was formed, an opening almost, and I distinctly recall my conversation with Priyadarsini Govind, whom I address as Priyaka. Deepa had brought her in as a mentor towards envisioning the desired poem for me. And her mentorship being available sparked even more of my interest further on. It was a huge motivation for me to just hold on to my creative spark and walk further. You know, the sand, the earth, to the water, to the space. And the fire is absent, but I think for me, it's the fire that the heroine is feeling inside. It had just started my baby steps into the world of Sangam. I have always been a night owl all through my school, uni days. That's the time when I find myself most productive. But the pandemic, the lockdown had erased all sense of time, giving it a new definition that was weirdly undefined in many ways. Not just late night hours, but early morning hours, and sometimes just unpredictable and erratic hours of sleeping and waking became my norm. the new reality almost. And here was a poem in my mother tongue that connected. Oh well, I'm saying mother tongue, but honestly, the Tamil in there is much more sweeter and pure than the Tamil that we speak these days. They are poles apart. Following my baby steps, it was now leading me, handheld almost. Nallendrandre yamam. Time is established even as it begins with these words, Nallendrandre yamam, meaning the midnight speaks in a deep silence, reverberating stillness of a midnight hour. These are some of Nandini Kargi's writing in her blog. They were part of my numerous research stroke search in trying to understand the poem which had caught my attention and its context. Just a one-off translation, reading, or an explanation is never enough, especially for someone like me for whom, although dance has been my dominant mode of expression, there's always very many other layers that feed in or fuel that expression. And I needed to be thrashed, I needed to be lashed by repetitive waves of interpretation, however big or small, long or short, high or low tide, just as waves in the Neithal landscape, which is where this poem is said to be embedded. Neithal means the sea and the surrounding areas around it. That's the landscape of the poem. And for a Sangam poem, landscape is of huge importance. The waves repetitively coming and going, forwards and backwards, never ever still, always moving, swirling, furling and unfurling. Quote, a poem is a distilled utterance. You have to marinate in it. These were spoken by Arundhati Subramaniam. And yes, before I knew it myself, the marination had already begun within. Something beautiful about the thought of marinating, isn't it? Priyaka was spot on in zeroing in exactly what I wanted to do with the poem and implicitly supporting and inspiring the poem's spark inside me that had now grown into a soft and steady flame almost.
Because the intention of the poem has to be, you have to tie it to the intention of the poem. Restlessness inside me that does not sync with the quietness outside.
To speak of the promise of poetry would be misleading, for a promise projects into the future, and it is precisely the coexistence of future, present, and past that poetry proposes. These are John Berger's words. Yes, Sangam had started to walk. It had moved on from the baby steps. It was now walking with me, and the flame inside was constantly fueled by very many creative pursuits. My daughter now knows exactly what the poem means. And she's astutely aware of the times when I am in the zone of the poem, be it when I'm trying to sing it or learn the words, physicalize it, speak about it, or speak it, or, be it when I'm driving her to school. Many a time she would go, Amma, are you talking to yourself? Well, that's the affect of a poem, which comes pregnant with so many meanings and simultaneously paving a way into itself for the seeker. I mean, the accessibility of such poems are just beyond words. Ineffable, to say the least. That's a word that I'm absolutely in love with. As most of the times I'm lost for words, but here in just a matter of 4 lines, in fact, we ended up in a version of a music creation that was almost 15 minutes long. Anxiety, reassurance, hope, uncertainty, memory. Well, during my precious discussion with the one and only most sought after music composer for dance, Dr. Rajkumar Bharathi, it definitely did trigger an emotion of anxiety or uncertainty or hope or memory. And then he would suggest another tune for reassurance. Why don't we try this? Reassured, I came back after that long session with Rajkumar sir. It initiated many more intense sessions with my own music guru, Chitravina Ganesh. And so the layering began once again, a new search. Early mornings before my London train journeys into London Contemporary Dance School. And yes, after a long 6 hour of day long teaching, I would stay back in those big, huge studios just by myself in solitude, trying to connect with the Sangam poem that had now ambled its way slowly, getting sculpted breath by breath in a new space. John Berger writes, a voice belongs first to a body and then to a language. The language may change, but the voice stays the same. Unquote. Well, that is indeed so true. The voice does stay the same. In my case, my vertical, horizontal, everything had collided internally and externally. My sleeplessness, early morning risings and working endlessly, mulling over words, chewing, marinating. I mean, there's this beautiful phrase in Tamil that comes to mind, asapodurdu. That's what the cows do. I was actually doing that in multiple ways. The Sangam poem's flame had, started slowly finding its way. It had started gathering heat, and I found myself trying out narratives during these intensives, be it whether it was to do with my eyes or face, etc. Yes, Sangam had now engulfed me, and I was almost ready to start running. And it was actually trying to make me run alongside with it. In fact, the sleeplessness concept even convinced me enough to explore the fields of neurology, psychology. I just ordered this on Amazon, The Master and His Emissary, and I've started reading this almost to the point of stalking Ian online, listening and re listening to many of his lectures available on the World Wide Web. Yes, I was running alongside and within Sangam almost. But it felt like a never ending marathon, and it still does feel that way because the flames were all now scattered. They were all ablaze now, not just in one point. They were sort of going in different, multiple directions, in fact. Very soon I'm scheduled to begin choreographing a piece at Trinity Laban Conservatoire, wherein I've decided to carry on with these Sangam ideas and try to see how it can inhabit multiple bodies who are coming from varying cultures and background in different countries. To think that all of just a 4-line Sangam poem has catapulted me and my thinking. I do not know where it will lead me next, but this I know for sure, that it will be a constant companion, always providing for that awe, overwhelm, and excitement in wanting to explore myriad directions that I find absolutely fascinating. The film that you are about to witness is a collaboration with dance artist, filmmaker Jo Cork. The verses are from Kuruntogai, verse number 6. It is an initial exploration towards a digital R&D, and it is by no means a completed piece of work. It's just an experiment, a scratch on the surface, almost as if to trigger more questions for me. And this is very much a start. It's an initial R&D with a hope towards taking it further into a digital research and development phase. Thank you.
Sari ma ri ma pa ni ma pa ri ma pa ni sari ri pa ma ge ri sa pa ni sari ni da pa nanandalai உலகமும் துஞ்சும் துஞ்சும் துல்ஜாதேனே சனித பமகரி பமகரி சனி ச பனி சரி ம பனி ச முனிவரே அடங்கினரே மக்கள் துஞ்சாதேனே ரிமகரி ச ரினி நித ப மகரி ச நி ச சொல்லவில்து இனிது இனிது அடங்கினரே மக்கள் மூனிவின் மகரி மப நீ சரி பமகரி சனி சனி த பமகரி சனி சரி மப நி ச ரி மப நி சரி மப நி சரி மா துஞ்சாதேனே துஞ்சாதே துஞ்சாதேனே துஞ்சாதேனி 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 துஞ்சாதேனி
நள் என்று அன்றே யாமம் சொல் அவிழ்ந்து இனிது அடங்கினரே மாக்கள் முன்னின்று நனந்தலை உலகமும் துஞ்சும் ஓர் யான் மன்ற துஞ்சாதேனி.